something feels wrong here. The character moves, the character jumps, and everything technically works exactly as it should. But if we are being honest, it's kind of boring. Now take a look at this. Same character, same mechanics, and almost the same code. Yet, somehow, it feels much better to play. So, what's the difference? Most developers assume they need more content, more enemies, more levels, more weapons, more mechanics. But that's usually not the real problem. The real problem is that the game isn't giving enough feedback to the player. And once you understand this, you will start noticing it in almost every great game you play. When a game feels boring, most developers immediately start adding new features. Maybe they add another enemy type, maybe they create a new ability, or maybe they spend weeks building an entire new system. The problem is that players don't experience your game through your code or your features list. They experience it through their actions. Every time a player presses a button, they are expecting a response. When they press jump, they are asking the game, "Did you hear me?" When they dash, they are asking, "Did that actually happen?" If the response is weak or barely noticeable, the game starts to feel lifeless. Great games understand this. They constantly communicate with the player. Every action gets a reaction. Every button press gets feedbacks. And that's what creates satisfying gameplay. Let's start with something simple, jumping. Here is a basic jump. It works exactly as intended. The player leaves the ground, reaches the top, and lands back down. Functionally, there is nothing wrong with it. But now let's add a small dust particle when the player takes off. Already it feels a little more alive. Then we add a jump sound effect, and suddenly the action has more presence. Next, we add a landing effect so the player can actually feel the impact of touching the ground. Finally, we improve the animation slightly. Notice what's interesting here. The mechanic itself never changed. The player still presses the same button and the character still jumps in the same way. Yet the experience feels completely different. That's because we didn't improve the mechanics, we improved the feedback. And once you start looking for it, you will realize that this applies to almost everything in your game. Take movement for instance. Players spend most of their time simply moving around the world. Here is a basic movement system. There is nothing technically wrong with it, but it feels little stiff and lifeless. Now let's make a small improvement. We add a better run animation, smooth out the movement a bit, and add some dust particle while running. Suddenly, the character feels more responsive and more enjoyable to control. We didn't add a single new mechanic. We simply made existing mechanic communicate better with player. And that's important because if movement doesn't feel good, then everything built on top of it will suffer as well. And this leads to something that many players never consciously realize. Most players can't even explain game feel. If you ask them why one game feels great and another feels boring, they often wouldn't have a clear answer. But they immediately notice when good feedback is missing. You can have beautiful graphics, detailed environments, and hundreds of hours of content. But if every action feels weak, the entire game feels fake. On the other hand, a simple game with strong feedback can be incredibly fun from the very first minute. Sometimes players don't fall in love with a game because of its content. They fall in love with it because simply moving, jumping, and interacting with world feels satisfying. Before worrying about adding more mechanics, focus on making the mechanics you already have feel great. Players' first impression usually doesn't come from your story, your art style, or even your level design. It comes from how the game feels in their hands. That's one of the reasons I created my basic 2D controller. It includes smooth movement, double jump, dash, wall jump, coyote time, and jump buffering right out of the box, with a strong focus on responsiveness and feel. And if you're looking for even more advanced ledge grabbing and modular setup, I have also created Pro 2D controller that expand on those ideas even further. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more Unity and game development content. And remember, players would not remember every mechanics you add to your game, but they will always remember how your game felt to play. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.